the GCC region is sitting on billions of dollars in untapped potential in the sustainable mobility space. A new report from Strategy and says sustainable mobility can unlock around $400 billion in economic value in the region through initiatives like promoting electric vehicles and building EV infrastructure, investing in public transport and incentivising environmentally friendly transportation. Well, let's get more on this. I'm pleased to say Mark Haddad joins us now. He is principal at Strategy and, which is part of the PwC network, joining us live from Lebanon this morning. Mark, great to get your analysis today on this, because what your report has found is that essentially governments around the GCC have these really ambitious goals when it comes to sustainability, but the report says transport is an area where they're essentially holding back. So what's the hold-up here?
Thank you, Dan, for having me, and Matt, always a pleasure. So basically what we're saying in the report is that, there's a lot of value at stake if we don't adopt sustainable mobility strategies. Now, what we try to value here is around $400 billion in economic value add, really driven by, more adoption of public transport modes, more adoption of electric vehicles. And what's holding us back is a more aggressive policy, I would say, being more coercive in the policies we're adopting to increase the cost of, car ownership, traditional fuel-based cars, and also incentivize people to move into cleaner modes. So what we're calling for is a bit more, aggressive policy making and, real results on the ground, because we're still lagging behind in terms of adoption of clean modes of transport, public transport being one of them. I mean, if we just look at the numbers, 25% of CO2 emissions come from the mobility sector in the GCC. Around 90% of trips in our cities are done in personalized vehicles. I mean, this is a very low adoption rate of public transport. Again, a low adoption of EVs. And what we're trying to call for is, sustainable strategy, something that moves us in the direction of countries like Europe and Southeast Asia and Singapore.
So what are some of the sustainable mobility solutions that GCC countries and cities like Abu Dhabi, like Dubai or like Riyadh could be implementing right now?
So what we're looking for is, first of all, bringing in technology into the space to the extent possible. Big investments have happened in public transport. As I said, policy making will enable more adoption, but also, the quest towards more adoption of electric vehicles will be key, because you are looking for, on the one hand, adopting a clean mode that doesn't harm the environment as much as the car. So what we're asking for is, on the one hand, support from governments in setting the right policies, as we said, but also public-private partnerships, in the design of cities, giving space for EV charging stations, also looking at rallying investments to the extent possible in the mobility technology space and in the innovation space. And what we're seeing, I mean, a lot of effort has been made, and let's be fair about that. Besides the investments in public transport, there's effort also in becoming test beds for future technologies. I mean, Hyperloop is one of them, and Abu Dhabi has tested a lot of these technologies. Another major development is the announcements on mega projects like the line in Neom, and His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, announced developing the first eco-friendly, tech-enabled, most customer-centric, I would say, mobility solution. So we need to see more of this. The burden is on governments to take the right approach, put the right policies in place, as we said, to increase the cost of fuel-based cars, and at the same time enable adoption of cleaner modes.
It brings me to my question. You just mentioned that there, Hyperloop in the UAE as well. How important is that for, of course, growing this sustainable footprint? It is a large capital outlay to begin with. Should governments be doing more to perhaps speed up the type of technology such as something like Hyperloop?
Yes, I mean, these things have started. I mean, what we saw is that, international players have came into the region. Governments have opened up, I would say, the market for those. Cities like Abu Dhabi and Dubai are becoming test beds for this technology. But in fact, what we're calling for is even more awareness, more adoption I mean, Hyperloop is a bit too far in the future, but starting just with EV, I mean, if we think of policies like incentivizing buying electric vehicles, making, for example, putting less subsidies on fuel to have people not adopt, I would say, the traditional cars to the extent that they do today. I mean, this is the type of concrete steps, things like congestion pricing, making the cost of operating a car higher, and that's what governments should do going forward.
Mark, appreciate you joining us on the show today. Mark Haddad from Strategy and.